think I'm going to try to, there it is. Now we're live. Okay, perfect. Well, hello, everyone. I think we are finally live and here. So hello and welcome to Green Philly's inaugural virtual symposium. Hopefully this will go viral soon enough. Thank you for joining our Embracing Resiliency. Although I wish I could be seeing you all in person, it's great to see so many familiar and new faces at this event. I'd like to start off by thanking those who made today's event possible. Thank you to both of our returning sponsors, Jefferson and TD Bank, for their continued support for Green Philly programming and for those in the community. My name is Julie Hancher, and I'm co-founder and editor of Green Philly. Green Philly is a media organization that connects people to sustainable solutions through our website, events, and podcast. It started in 2008 when I discovered my employer was throwing our recyclables into the trash cans. Although Philly has done this as recently as last week, I recognized that sustainability seemed difficult, hard, and expensive. And instead, it should be something that was easy, accessible, and low cost. Over the past 12 years, we've continued to provide sustainable solutions, although we still face many challenges and questions that we had in 2008. Speaking of challenges, 2020 can feel overwhelming, right? Ironically, I had a really good feeling about 2020. In January, Green Philly moved into our own office at 915 Spring Garden, where we are broadcasting from today. We started a new Delaware River watershed project, and things were going smoothly. Then we all faced hurdle after hurdle. The pandemic, economic uncertainty, a reckoning of racial injustice and inequalities for our Black citizens and people of color. And together as a society, we still keep facing challenges. A divided upcoming election and Supreme Court justice seat. And if you haven't, I want to take this moment to ask you again to please make a plan to vote for the environment and remind those of your friends and family and loved ones to make a plan to vote as well. We still have the ongoing climate crisis, and we have reminders, like the recent images of San Francisco's orange skies and West Coast that are now the worst wildfire season on record. We can either all throw our hands up and give up, or we can face these challenges. Philadelphia is a gritty, resilient city. When the city shut down, we saw neighbors care for each other and offer to help each other with errands and donating masks to food. Small businesses have had to come together to reinvent their business models. Nonprofits and organizations expand their mission to address environmental inequity in the city. Today's symposium will be bringing together stories from these wide variety of resilient residents and also discuss challenges they continue to overcome. We have over 175 attendees, speakers, and nominees a part of today's ceremony and events. Make sure to check the event agenda and star sessions you'd like to attend for reminders throughout the day. You can also request video meetings with other attendees or be paired for speed networking sessions during our breaks at 12 p.m. and 2 p.m. And we'll conclude the day with a celebration to recognize extraordinary local leaders during a special presentation of Sustain PHL. You can bring a cocktail or a mocktail to the reception as we envision a sustainable, equitable city. And now I'm very excited to introduce our morning keynote, someone who has been at the heart of Philadelphia's sustainability efforts for almost 20 years, including as Director of Outreach for Penn Future, where she founded the Next Great City initiative to enact a common sense, cost-effective sustainability policy agenda for Philadelphia. She also worked on local air pollution issues stemming from the South Philadelphia Sunoco refinery and advocated for improvements to Philadelphia's lagging recycling program while Clean Water Action. She was a deputy chief of staff and director of government affairs for the Philadelphia Water Department. And in 2016, she was appointed as a director of the Office of Sustainability for the City of Philadelphia under Mayor Jim Kenney's administration. Recognized for her efforts with awards, including the Florence Nelson Award for her work on the board of the Recycling Alliance of Philadelphia, and for Green Works by Sustain PHL in 2017. She continues to push Philadelphia towards a sustainable, equitable city. I'm pleased to introduce our morning keynote, the inspirational Christine Knapp. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you so much for having me, and thanks for putting this together. I know it was hard to pivot to a virtual event, and with so much having happened, in the last 6 months, I think it's been pretty inspiring to see how you and others have been able to sort of creatively find ways to keep us connected and keep us learning and still forging ahead. So I'm grateful to see this event happening, and excited about the other speakers today as well. So I'm happy to kick off with some thoughts. When you just mentioned the Green PHL Award, I was just remembering that was 2017. I believe my daughter was like 3 months old, and I think going to the Green PHL Awards was my first time I went out of the house by myself after having a kid. So it was like a really fun night for me. So unfortunately, you're not going to have that in-person experience this year, but I think we'll still find a lot of ways to connect with each other. I want to start really by just recognizing that these are really challenging times. I know some folks have, lost jobs, lost income. Some are struggling like I am with childcare. Luckily, my kid is not in school, but I can't even imagine the virtual school struggle that a lot of parents are facing. Even more so, folks have had COVID-19 or had someone close to them have it or even die from it. And, a lot of folks are dealing with mental health struggles right now due to the isolation and the stress that we're all feeling. And, there's just recognizing that some folks may not be here today because of all of these stressors. So I just wanted to start off by extending my thoughts to all of you and to everyone who's struggling, because I know this moment is really hard, and I appreciate that you've taken the time out to be here. So when we talk about this moment being hard, I've been thinking a lot about this, and I think that it's clear that there's actually a number of different crises that are going on at the same time. So first, obviously, we have this global pandemic. About a million people worldwide have at this point died, and 30 million people have been inflicted with the virus. In the US, we're seeing that people of color are much more likely to be getting and dying of COVID-19. So it is putting a highlight on our racial disparities as well. Due to the pandemic, we're facing an economic crisis that people are saying may be felt for a generation or more. Particularly, we're seeing small businesses in Philly closing, and some estimates are saying as much as 30% of those businesses may never reopen. And businesses owned by people of color have, again, been among the most impacted and may be least likely to reopen, given other statistics that we've seen in terms of resiliency after disruptive events. The righteous uprisings over the murder of George Floyd and many others has led to a long overdue reckoning on the other pandemic of sort of white supremacy and systemic racism, and the many ways that we see that show up in society, from the obvious police brutality issue, but also environmental justice and many other spaces. And our, as you referenced, Julie, our democracy itself, some days feels like it is in crisis. We're seeing an attempts to prevent people from voting, to stop people from exercising their First Amendment rights to public protest, and even hints at not accepting the results of a free and open election that are coming from the highest office in the land. So these are, pretty scary sentiments to be hearing. And then, as you also alluded to, this is all happening while we're still facing this climate crisis, which has been very present this year. We've seen heat waves all summer, including in Philadelphia, but around the country and the world. The wildfires that have been devastating the West Coast, and a hurricane season that ran out of letters of the alphabet. But before we even kind of heard of most of them, we were already around the alphabet. And again, we see that people of color and poor and working class folks are most likely to be negatively affected by these natural disasters. And again, we know statistics show they are going to be less resourced to recover after these disruptive events. So, a lot of folks are saying, I see a lot of memes about 2020 just being this terrible year. It's just all a, terrible coincidence that all these things are happening at the same time because it's such a bad year. But I also remember thinking that in 2016, after David Bowie died, it was like the whole year was, terrible because he was the glue holding the fabric of society together. I remember thinking that in 2017, and I think that reality is that we're not just experiencing randomly bad years, but that actually all these things are happening because we've known that they were going to happen. We've long predicted to know that climate crisis was happening and it was going to have these effects, and that if we are basically allowing these problems to continue on without addressing them, they're going to express themselves. And really these are, I would say, symptoms of a common disease, which is basically our capitalistic, extractive, and fossil fuel-based economy that is prioritizing unlimited growth over the well-being of people, and that creates and perpetuates systemic racism. That's a mouthful of words, and I should give credit to my staff who have helped put these words down on paper as we've been working on examining our own work and our sort of approach to environmental justice and racial equity in our office. But the good news, to not go too far into the negative, is that if we can reflect on this and know that this is common root that behind a lot of these crises, then it also means that we can find common solutions for them too. Solutions that can make reparations for past racial injustice, that creates an economy that works for all of us, and then reverses the course of climate pollution before it's too late. So I believe that the root is that we can and must have a green and just recovery from this moment. The big question is, how do we do this? Or what does this look like? So we know we can expand affordable housing. We can do it in a couple of ways. We can invest in existing homes rather than letting them fall into disrepair and be torn down and thrown into landfills. We can, by doing so, by protecting existing homes, we protect generational wealth that's often lost when homes are lost. We can improve public health for folks living inside those homes that may have health impacts from mold or other things. We reduce the energy burden and the cost of utilities for folks living in those homes and the associated carbon emissions from energy. And that's existing buildings. We can also build more new, highly efficient buildings that are like Passive House or other standards we're seeing in other countries that are being used to build affordable housing. We can fill in vacant lots. We can build up density near transit stops. And all of this work would help to create and sustain local jobs, particularly for folks who have historically been shut out of the building trades unions, which we know have not been very diverse for way too long. We can also transform our energy system. We need to move towards clean, renewable energy by growing the use of solar on our homes, schools, and other institutions and businesses. We're already starting to explore new pathways for PGW to thrive and retain their workforce in a low and no carbon future. We can ensure low-income residents are not left out of this clean energy transition, but in fact are among the first to benefit from renewable energy. And all of this work to move towards renewables will remove air pollution that we know too often impacts communities of color and can help create new jobs. We know the clean economy employs more people in Pennsylvania than the fossil fuel industry does, and we want to see that continue to grow. We can make walking, biking, and public transit more accessible, affordable, equitable, safe, and convenient, so we can reduce pollution, and we can expand access to jobs, to childcare, to healthcare, to other necessities. We can take back the public spaces that we've been dedicating for single-use cars, like we're seeing with the restaurants that are taking over streets. I saw a drag show happening out on South Street last night in front of Bob and Barbara's, which is a brand new use of open street. And I think people are really enjoying sort of being able to take over that public space. So we shouldn't just be doing this in this moment of crisis. We can do this going forward. By doing this investment in transit, we can build 15-minute communities, which is where everyone can access all of their needs without needing to own a car and without needing to go very far, which allows families to thrive, it allows seniors to age in place, it creates healthy spaces that people want to live and grow in. We can stop extracting natural resources to create products that end up as waste, but instead we can focus on creating a circular economy where our resources are regenerated. By doing so, we'll slash the production of waste that ends up as litter in our neighborhoods. We can put the onus back on industry to take care of the products that they create rather than them telling us it's our problem to take care of. We see some local pilots with an urban mining company called Metabolic and a textile and e-waste recycler named Retriever that are both showing that there are new business models that are possible that can help create jobs and help us rethink our relationship to consumption. We can invest in nature-based solutions like parks, trees, urban agriculture, and stormwater infrastructure to essentially suck carbon out of the environment. These solutions also help improve air quality. They reduce stormwater runoff that protects our water quality. It reduces the urban heat island effect and helps to make healthier and more beautiful neighborhoods. We've already seen the impact that green stormwater infrastructure has had in creating jobs and spurring economic development in Philadelphia through the Water Department's Green City Clean Waters program. Those jobs range from design, installation, and maintenance, but they're also helping to reduce crime. They're helping to improve air quality. They're helping to reduce that urban heat island effect. So we see that there's co-benefits across the board for these types of nature-based solutions. What we need to do is make sure that these solutions are everywhere, but particularly we need to overinvest in communities that have been marginalized for too long. We see this with the heat work that we've been doing in Hunting Park, where the neighborhood has half of the tree canopy that the rest of the city averages, but has more paved surfaces. So if we're going to bring Hunting Park from 9% tree canopy to the citywide average of 20%, we need to do a lot more investing there than in other neighborhoods. We can also expand on our really amazing and diverse food scene by supporting small food businesses, which is one of our largest regional employers. We can help people access more healthy and local food, and we can also grow community through food and create more economic opportunity. And I'm sure there's a lot more great ideas that I didn't cover here that some of you have and that others around our city have that we need to start hearing more from and start putting into the centering those ideas of folks that we have not been listening to for too long. So now we know sort of some of the ideas of what we can be doing. How do we start doing it? How can we begin to take the steps to move in these directions? The first thing that I've been thinking a lot about and some of my team have been thinking about is we need to use new metrics for how we measure success. If we're only measuring GDP, which gross domestic product is sort of the standard economic measure, we're only going to be measuring how much we are rebuilding the economy that we had previously that, again, we know is sort of part of the problem. So if we use the same measures, we're going to end up with the same problem. GDP basically is just a measure of how much we're consuming, which is not necessarily something I think we want to keep improving and growing. You could look at metrics like the number of jobs created as being a little bit better. That's great, people are employed. But do we know what kinds of jobs they are? Do they have a family sustaining pay? Is there a career path for that job? Is the job in a sector that helps us build a more sustainable future or one that takes us further away from that? I know it makes me sound like a tree hugger when I ask this question, but what would happen in Philadelphia if we measured happiness of our residents? What would that tell us about where we need to focus our efforts? And I'm not suggesting that's the metric we should be using, but it does open up the question of what are the measurements that we should use that will help us to really understand where we are and where we want to go. I think, secondly, we need to listen to and prioritize actions that benefit those who have been marginalized. And if there's any progress that we're going to be able to make, we need to account for and heal past harms first. While a lot of us, including me and my office, have been talking about equity, we need to understand that equity requires an overinvestment in communities that have been underinvested in order to begin to right the ship. I know I've personally struggled with the sort of urgency of the climate crisis and the need to kind of move right now, and the need to slow down and listen to people and take that time to build trust. I was fortunate enough to hear a keynote speech from Adrienne Marie Brown. If folks don't know her, she's an author and speaker. You should follow her on Twitter. She's great. She was our keynote speaker at the Urban Sustainability Directors Network that I'm a part of at our annual meeting in Detroit last year. And I asked her about this question of this, conundrum between urgency and slowing down to listen to people and bring them along. And she basically responded that you can only progress at the speed of trust, which was a really good reminder that if you want to go fast, eventually you have to slow down and bring people along, and then together you can have a much bigger impact and get to where you need to go faster. So I feel like I finally found the answer to that conundrum, which is, even though it might feel antithetical to this sense of urgency, we do sometimes need to really slow down and make sure that we're bringing people along and hearing where they are and hearing what they need, and not just driving what we think the answer is, without pausing and asking reflective questions. From where I sit in my position, I think we need to pause and review our programs and our policies and evaluate how we can maximize positive outcomes. Are there new partnerships we can make? Is there another goal that someone has? Are there other co-benefits that we can add into programs that we're looking at? We've been, as some of you may know, pushing forward with a building energy performance program for large commercial buildings. And one thing that we know, in addition to slashing carbon emissions and saving a ton of money for the building owners, we also know that it could create between 500 and 600 jobs. So we're trying to put thoughtful intentions towards that now to make sure that those jobs are available to be filled by local, diverse workforce in Philadelphia. So that's another way to kind of look at this program and get another value out of it and extract another co-benefit. I think we also need to evaluate whether there's any possible negative harms that are coming from our ideas, our policies, our programs that could be eliminated or mitigated that we haven't previously thought about. All of this work will require deep collaboration. We need to see action at the city, state, and federal government level. We need residents, advocates, technical experts, academics, faith institutions, artists, businesses, basically everybody. We know that siloed approaches have not ever led to transformational change, and they won't do it now. We need to break down those silos if we're going to make the difference that I believe we all want to make. So I'm committed to breaking down barriers. I'm making the commitment to empower those who've been marginalized. I'm going to be looking for new solutions to old problems, whether those come from reimagining old solutions to work in our modern context, or looking around the world at indigenous populations, others who have had answers to our problems for a long time that we just haven't listened to, or looking at the possibility of the future that technology brings, that sort of innovation can bring. I'm committed to being an active participant in this election, and I hope that you all will be as well. I believe this is our moment for true transformation to create a green and just future, and I'm hoping that you'll join me in the work. So thank you again for having me, Julie, and I'm happy to take a question or two if there's any time. I wasn't timing myself, so I have no idea if I went too short or too long.
Great. Thank you, Christine. Yeah, I'll keep my eyes out on the chat in case there are any questions. But you did just mention the election and voting, and I know that the U.S. election is on November 3rd of this year. The U.S. is also scheduled to pull out of the Climate Accord, the UN Climate Accord, on November 4th. The city of Philadelphia has said that they're continuing on with UN climate goals, but what does it mean if the federal government still pulls out of this deal that happened with a worldwide agreement?
Yeah, I mean, I think from the beginning of the Trump administration's announcement with their intention to withdraw, tons of mayors, governors, private sector leaders all sort of stepped up and said, we're still in. I think that's amazing, and there's been so much great work, very inspirational action taken at a lot of those levels, and particularly I look at a lot of my peers in cities and seeing local action that's been really helpful in kind of keeping up hope. But I think from the very beginning, we were clear that we are not alone going to be able to solve or meet the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement, right? Like all of these cities together can do great work. We cannot get all the way there. We kind of envisioned this as, putting our finger in the dam and being able to kind of hold things up a little bit until the federal government was able to jump in and take action. So I think it's clear that we need, again, action at all levels of government, and that includes federal government, and that action has to be helpful and not reversing course, which has been, unfortunately, what we've seen too much of in this administration. So, again, I highly encourage everyone to get registered to vote, get your friends registered to vote, figure out your voting strategy, because you have a number of different options this year. You don't have to just go in the booth. You can also vote by mail. You can get your ballot and then return it early, kind of do early voting, and there's going to be different sort of places set up where you can do that. So you can knock on doors, phone bank, you can do any number of things, and it's so hard this year with the pandemic where a lot of our traditional ways of engaging with folks are off the table, but do what you can wherever you can, because cities, and we're gonna, we'll keep doing what we can do, and we'll have the urgency, but we cannot even begin to meet the goals of the Paris Climate Agreement. I mean, that agreement was hard enough. It was very ambitious. We cannot get there if we don't get action at the federal level.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Christine. I have one more quick question. What brings you hope right now?
What gives me hope right now?
Mm-hmm.
Man, the activists that are out there. I mean, last night I was up on, I was hearing helicopters, and I kind of went up and on my roof and could see there were helicopters, and I, got on Twitter and saw, another group of activists sort of in honor of Breonna Taylor and the lack of action, giving justice to her and her family out there again, and it's just so inspiring to me that folks, and it's mostly young people, which is inspiring, but it's not just young people. So I think, when we wrote the Greenworks magazine this year, we were reflecting on the 50 years since Earth Day. And, I think one of the things that I was reflecting on was that movement of the 70s and the original Earth Day was youth-led. Today's, Sunrise Movement and other sort of activism in the youth. But if we can bring the energy of the youth and the wisdom of the elders together, what will be possible. So but seeing the young people really being out there right now is really inspiring and giving me hope that it may not be tomorrow. I hope it is, but it may not be tomorrow, but there is change that's coming, and I'm hoping to lead and help or get out of the way, because I think they know what we need to be doing.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your inspirational keynote and all the work that you've been doing for, as I mentioned, the past 20 years, and what you continue to do and lead our city to a sustainable future. So thank you, Christine, for being here. We really appreciate your morning keynote so much. Thank you, everyone. And now we are starting our first session. So the good news is you can keep on hopefully being inspired by the rest of the day, understand these challenges that we're facing, continue to talk with the attendees and the speakers as well, and look forward to seeing you throughout the day. So thank you so much.